Hi there, everybody. Welcome to our stream. Today, I'm joined with a special guest today. We are going to learn Hwoarang with Frontier, a very known, very well liked. Hi. We're gonna learn today some Hwoarang with Frontier. He's a God of Destruction Hwoarang player, and we're just gonna get some insight and see what he can tell us so we can improve our game's play style. So yeah, I'm gonna unmute him so we can hear him now talk. All right. Okay, so yeah, all ready now. Okay, so now we're live on stream too. We should be good. Okay. All right. Frontier, can you hear me?
Ooh. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Alrighty. There we go. Try to make sure Discord's not full screen. There we go. Okay, so we're gonna go to. I will also share my stream. Hopefully it won't lag, but we'll see. Practice. And I will.
Yeah, it's all good. Like, so I can also see it and confirm if you're doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Let me know if you're able to see my stream.
In a bit. Yeah, I see it.
All right, perfect, wonderful. Okay, so let me just ask some questions like Raf or Rip so I can kind of get so both Chad and myself can get some insight. I've watched some of your YouTube videos. I think your guys are really good, especially your wall damage stuff, because it's like you do stuff like I didn't even think about, like just like that I wasn't even aware of. So it was very insightful, like the 3 forward, like off of flamingo, left flamingo, like, or I think right flamingo, 3-3 into 3-1, 3-2, I think. I thought that was really impressive, and like you show some other very technical stuff. But how long have you been playing Hwoarang, if you don't mind me asking?
How long? How long?
You can say from, you don't have to be like a specific day, like some T3, T4, T5, you know, if that's easier for you.
I mean, the way I do is I separate like when I actually started playing the game and when I just played the game. So playing the games, like you just picked it up, you press some buttons, right? You're just having fun with it.
Right.
And then actually playing the game, like you learn the frames, you learn the system, matchups. You know, you go really in depth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I would say maybe sometime from 2015.
2015, okay.
Yeah, I guess it's been 11 years.
Yeah, that's a bit, yeah. So what gravitated you to Hwoarang? Like, again, another question I wanted to ask.
It's a very funny story. I mean, he's cool, right? Like, most of the characters in this game, you're gonna find somebody you like for whatever reason. Hwoarang's case, I just beat somebody with him in the arcade, man. That's it.
Really? That's simple.
And I was like, yeah, it's that simple. I was like, you know what? I'm sold. Because I was a Jin player prior to that, and I was, on and off in terms of my performance against arcade players. And the arcade players in my place were, well, so they were some of the best players in the damn local. So
Fair enough.
So it's like when you swap over to another character and you suddenly get a win, you're like, wait a minute, that might be the missing ingredient.
Yeah, true. I'm trying to
And after that, I just ascended forth for like 11 years to learn the character.
Fair enough. Hey, sometimes it's that simple. Like, that's really cool though. Yeah. I personally, I wanted to pick up Hwoarang because I took a long break on 7. I think I got tired of fighting so much geese and noctis at that time. So I just took a long break, and then somewhere along that line, well, a friend of mine said, why don't you try something new, something different? So I always wanted to pick up Hwoarang ever since like T5, because he always was like a complex character, and especially in like Tag 2, he had some incredibly flourish like combos him with Beck, and I was like, you know what, might as well pick up Hwoarang. And yeah, I think he's really cool as a character, but I also noticed that he's very like high, like a lot of high skill, or a lot of buttons that like are interesting, that are very like execution focused, which is pretty cool, which I like. And this is coming from like a Yoshimitsu Xiaoyu kind of player. But yeah.
Oh, you play some Yoshi and Xiao Yu.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel right at home then.
Yeah. He has some moves that are similar to Xiaoyu more than Yoshi, but yeah, I can definitely see some of the stuff.
I mean, there's
But
also the fact that like you need to be a little bit more creative on the type of characters you mentioned. Although I guess in 8 or even 7 you could argue it, wherein you could play a little bit more simpler, keep it more compact, or use a certain standard for like Xiao Yu and Yoshi. Hwoarang, it's
Yeah.
always gonna be you don't really stop spinning the wheel. So it's a lot of brain power that just keeps getting used back and forth.
Yeah, definitely. He's very flow state. It seems I have to kind of just be in the like the mode right there. When there's like an opening, I kind of have to work with it. It seems.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Hey, Martin. We're doing some coaching today. We're with the one of the greats for Hwoarang players, Frontier. So we're gonna learn some Hwoarang from with him. Yeah. Okay, so is one thing I wanted to ask, I think right off a rip, is something that I've noticed that like obviously this is a different Tekken. I know that in Tekken 7 movement was a lot more different, a lot more defense focused with Korean backstepping and like more control spacing. In this game, being a little bit more aggressive, is that still very important for Hwoarang, or is it still more about applying pressure for Hwoarang, in your opinion?
It's always going to be a bit of both, right? So going back to like the comparisons to like playing Xiao Yu and Yoshimitsu and being creative with it, it's the same thing. Like as you mentioned earlier, like flow state, and you gotta pick your spots, pick your moments. So neutral, as a fighting game fundamental, that doesn't change. Your footsies, your spacing, knowing the frame states. So all of that still gets applied. Now naturally, yeah, movement or the backdash cancel got a little bit hit in Tekken 8, but it still has of high value, most especially if you're able to use it at the right spots to create space, or if you're against moves of with there's pushback on hit or on block.
Yeah.
And sidesteps is typically better in 8, although there are moves that kind of deny that ability to move around in the 3D space.
Yeah.
But it's still of high value. Tekken is still pretty much Tekken.
Yeah, true. Okay, that's great. That's great. So I guess let's go to some of his key moves that you think are very important that you would like to mention, like right off a rip. Like, what are some things that I should always, as a Hwoarang player, kind of make sure to be using more often than not? Obviously, don't spam it, but like moves that I should always keep aware of from my opponent.
Actually, I wouldn't even start with key moves. I would start with learning the basics or going back to system mechanics, because Hwoarang, while yeah, that's eventually going to become important information, without having the base, you will eventually get into a lot of Hwoarang hurdles, and a lot of Hwoarang hurdles usually come with not having a solid foundation of the fundamentals. So even if I, let's say, tell you, okay, down 3-4 is always a key move that puts you into right flamingo. You can enter mix-ups here. It's launch punishable on block, right? I mean, it doesn't really help if you don't know where to move back and forth, how to use your frames, etc., etc., etc. So this is where, like I mentioned earlier, like a lot of the thinking, a lot of the creativity, nonstop, like how's my opponent reacting to this one? How many times do they duck? How many times do they sidestep? Okay, which option should I consider now? What's the probability of success? Yada, 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 yada. So we'd have to go really to basic fundamentals first in order to actually get to Hwoarang at all.
All right, so let's start from the beginning then. I'm ready, coach.
So in the forum, you did say you were around 4 out of 10 understanding for Tekken.
Yeah.
So how much of frame data do you understand? Or no?
I understand how it works. That certain moves based on the amount of frames on both startup and like advantage will cause an opponent to either react, either have the ability to have a window of response. For example, if an opponent does a 1-2, let's say like Hwoarang is like 1-1, is when one is +8. So I will still have my turn because I'm still plus on 8. If I do like a 1, 2, 3, it puts me at +9. So it gives my opponent a turn back, but I'm still at advantage. When you have minus frames is when you don't have, you sometimes might be able to be punished, if I'm correct.
Yeah, you definitely are on track. This does not sound like a 4 out of 10 player. No, it's not.
Like I said,
it does not.
I have a little bit of background.
I'm sorry, you got choppy there. Godai?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
Yeah, because it got cut at a certain moment.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I like to undersell myself a little bit because I realistically I know about this, but thinking about it like retroactively in the middle of a match, I you know, I'm too focused and I kind of forget about like, oh, I can probably respond to my opponent this way. I know it in theory, but I don't know if I can. I don't do it in practice like as often as I would like to. Whereas like why I like to undersell myself a little bit.
Oh yeah, fair enough. But yeah, because even me, like, I don't really think that much in terms of like, oh, okay, this is the frame, blah blah blah. It's a lot of like muscle memory at that point. But you do wanna like initially think first before it becomes muscle memory. That way you can like spend your mental bandwidth, your mental stack anywhere else. But yeah, going back to frame data. So yeah, you're definitely on the right track. Frame advantage means it's essentially your turn, or like you have more options available to you. And then frame disadvantage is essentially just vice versa, the opposite. Right. And to make it a really quick crash course, right? So your 10 frame jab, if you press a 1 or a 2, is essentially +1. Oh, well, the 2 is 0 on block. That's generally how it is for most characters in the game. So if you set Kazuya to like the action after hit block, right?
Okay.
So offense, standing. Leave it on standing.
Leave it on standing?
And then your and then the action after hit or on block, standing block.
Okay. And then block, standing block. Okay.
Yeah, so if you press your standing jab, so jab, like really quickly. So jab into another jab, not 1-1.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yes, to get him to block, right? So you just do
right.
1-1. You're going to see that your jab is +8 on hit, +1 on block. So it's a pretty damn good move. It also comes out at 10 startup frames, which you can see at the bottom left of your screen.
Right.
And that's universally the fastest move in the game. So you can basically use this as your basic math. This is the foundation of where everything goes. Because once you start adding basic addition and subtraction, this is where the game starts getting played. So if the move connects on hit, it's +8. So what you do is you take the startup frames, 10 minus 8. And now essentially your 10 frame jab comes out at 2 frames if you press it immediately after the jab hits. So that makes it, a pretty dangerous move for the opponent to look out for. And then if we do it on block, so that becomes 10 minus 1. So now it becomes a 9 frame jab. So if you change Kazuya's second action to punishment and then set his punishment setting to do a jab, you will always beat Kazuya even if he attempts to press a jab of his own. So select punishment. Oh yeah, you can record it yourself. You can press a jab. And then you set the standing to standing block so that, it becomes +1 instead of +8.
Standing block, okay.
Yeah, and then if you just press jab into jab, Kazuya shouldn't beat you. So you need to press your jab faster. There you go.
A little faster, yeah.
So that's basically how frame advantage usually works. So for as long as a move is plus, what you do is you take the startup frames and subtract it by your frame advantage. Now, if a move is negative on block, let's say you do Hwoarang's down forward 1. Hwoarang's down forward 1 is a 13 frame mid that is +6 on hit and -1 on block. So we're taking the negative part for frame disadvantage. So frame disadvantage is the opposite of frame advantage. If you're doing subtraction for frame advantage, you're gonna do addition for frame disadvantage. So from instead of 10 minus 1, you're gonna do 10 plus 1. So now essentially your jab will always lose to Kazuya's jab. So if you attempt to do DF1 into jab, your jab will never win for the most part. And that's because you're slower.
Right.
So your jab now comes out at 11 frames. So if Kazuya presses his 11 frame move and you press your jab, what will happen is that you'll trade.
Right.
So that's essentially a very quick crash course on frame data. So a lot of it is a lot of basic addition and subtraction.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets a little bit more complicated when we add, let's say, some algebra into the equation.
Okay.
So algebra can be the states. So there are 3 states in Tekken. Well, 3 states? 2 states, technically. You have standing and you have crouching. Yeah, technically 3 states because there's also airborne. So standing is where you're in now. And then if you hold down, that's crouching. Down or down back. And then, of course, if you jump or do an airborne move, you are in an airborne state, which is neither standing nor crouching.
Yeah. That's pretty hard. I forgot that jumping is like a little weird in this game.
Now, you don't really need to jump. So, like, let's just say you press up 4, up forward 3 plus 4, up 3. That will put you all in an airborne state. Or even pressing RFF, DF3 as well.
Right flamingo stance. What was that? I'm sorry?
RFF. So you 3 plus 4 to enter RFF from LFF.
All right. So like that?
Well, that is right flamingo stance. Just let the foot go down. And then you... Okay. So from... You're in... Yeah, there you go. Almost there. So press 3 plus 4 in left foot forward. You're there. And then all you have to do is press DF3. Down forward 3.
Down forward 3? Okay. So... No, wait. Sorry.
Yeah, you're in left flamingo. There you go. Right foot forward. You're almost there.
Wait, did I do that right? No. Down forward 3, you said?
Yeah, okay. From the starting stance, left foot forward, that's where you are. You press 3 plus 4.
3 plus 4. Gotcha.
Then down forward 3.
Then down forward 3? Ah, okay.
There you go.
sorry.
Yeah, that's right foot forward, down forward 3. So that's also an airborne move.
Gotcha.
So 3 states. So this is where some of the algebra starts to come into play.
Mm-hmm.
So a jab is a high move. So while it is dangerous to keep blocking a jab and you can't retaliate versus that jab anymore, you can crouch the jab or high crush it by crouching or doing a standing down jab. So if you do down forward 1 into a down 1, you would beat essentially, there you go. You would beat essentially the opponent's standing jab. Alternatively, if Kazuya would, let's say, or Hwoarang does a low, you do the opposite. So if what you did earlier was a high crush, there's also a low crush, wherein you use your airborne state in order to beat a low move. Like RFF DF3, up forward 3 plus 4, and the likes.
Okay.
And then there's still additional more properties like, let's say, power crush, armor, etc., etc. So it gets a little bit complicated, but for the most part, there's the basic part, and then there's just the other part that may affect the frame state.
Right.
So you had a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, in a situation where, let's say our opponent is obviously being more patient than we are, right? Let's say they are, let's put Kazuya in a situation that he's blocking a lot more of our moves, right? Like, in this situation, he's obviously going to be able, because I go low and then I'm still in the low state, like in the combo of the down 3, he's obviously has a window to punish because of that, because he can low crush me or high crush me, correct? Is that what is happening right in this situation?
Yeah, that is correct, because down 3-4 is effectively a negative 20 move on block.
Really? Oh,
or as long as the first hit is blocked. Because if the second hit is blocked, then that's plus 8.
Okay, so in a situation like that where an opponent is turtling, or not turtling, I guess, but focusing more on defense, what do you what is a good option to kind of like open them up in your opinion, or let's not focus on that yet?
I mean, we can pivot to that. So, moving back from how the quick crash from frame data, the basic addition subtraction, and then the additional properties that may get layered on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
If your opponent is just sitting there, it's just like, okay, so the question is more like, how do I utilize frame advantage, right? So,
Yes. Yeah.
I'll do it on my end, my screen.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
just to show it really, really quickly. So going back, right, an opponent cannot jab if I throw out a jab first. So it's always my advantage. So if the opponent decides to stay in place, I need to have a counter option for it. So at which point, the frame trap, right, is your mix-up. So because I am ahead of my opponent by 1 frame on block, and my jab pretty much nullifies them from pressing a standing button, this is my frame trap at a really, really basic level. So the next is, how do you beat this frame trap? That's the first thing you need to consider. So as we mentioned earlier, jabs can be beaten by crouching or high crushing the move. So if my opponent is looking to duck after my jab, perhaps it is a good idea, right? Because the opponent's not going to bother trying to press a button anymore. It's a good idea to throw out a mid. So this allows me to check my opponent if they're going to do said counterplay. So you're just basically covering up holes or trying to complement your initial frame trap. So your initial frame trap prevents them from pressing a button. The way to beat your frame trap is to duck the high, right? This is not counting any other possible defensive options just yet. So you check them with a mid in down forward 1. And then the other possibility is the opponent remains standing. So now you have 3 options, because if the opponent does remain standing, then that's when you can throw out the after-mentioned down 3-4. So if they remain standing, right, you change it to standing block. So if I throw out the jab into down 3-4, that's my advantage. So it's just like, okay, jab into jab. That's my initial frame trap. And then the next time I throw out this situation, you want to see how they react. So you jab into jab again. Okay, nothing really happened. So since nothing really happened on the second time, perhaps on the third time, I can hit that down 3-4. And they're like, all right, then now you're moving your opponent to a different situation. And you're maximizing, leveraging your initial frame trap. Even if +1 doesn't exactly sound super dangerous, that's generally how most mix-ups, for as long as you have the frames to work with, go. So it's just like, okay, what's the initial thing that prevents my opponent from pressing straight up? Of course, we're not counting movement just yet, because movement would allow the opponent to move. So, okay, if movement allows the opponent to avoid this, right? So if I change this to sidestep right, and I do a jab into a jab, it's now nullified. But
Right.
down 3-4 does not catch that. Down forward 1 catches the sidestep right. So now I'm covering another option. So not only am I catching someone who may potentially duck after the jab into a jab because they want to avoid the jab and maybe potentially also avoid the down 3-4, I can also just prevent them from doing that with a DF1. You start to look for option coverage at that point. It's like, okay, jab into jab is really good at preventing a standing opponent and buttons. That is my initial mix-up. Now, what do I need to do? What are the other options I show to my opponent so they start thinking about something? So this is where all the RPS starts to come into play. Like, okay, rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Is it going to be the jab? Is it going to be the down forward 1? Is it going to be down 3-4? Both you and your opponent are locked in that and trying to cover as many defensive options as possible. Of course, this is as basic as we can tone it down, because let's say you want to throw in backdash, right? So jab into jab does not catch backdash, but down forward 1 would catch the backdash, but they're extremely safe. And then down 3-4 catches the backdash. So it's like, oh, okay. And then you can start like listing out, oh, okay. And then that becomes like the next best thing I can do here. So it's always going to come back to that. Like, what's my initial frame trap? And what are the counterplays to this frame trap? So if these are the counterplays to my frame trap, I need options that would complement my frame trap. That way I have options to press just in case, you know, they hold or they do something else.
Right. Okay. So obviously, with keeping a frame data in mind, is that why a lot of higher level like Hwoarang players are a little bit more reserved at the beginning of the match? Like, for example, basing off of some of your footage, even you kind of like wait a little bit and then you see an opening. I see you usually use either a back three or even rock jet upper.
AFSR.
Yeah, or like a few other moves to kind of get in. Is that why you usually wait or are a little bit more patient at the beginning of the match?
That's more of a player style and
Right.
more of how you're going to gather information. So frame traps in and of itself help you get that information, right? So again, if I like jab and jab, what kind of reaction did they give me there? And it's like, also, what am I initially trying to get as well? Am I trying to play like frame tight? If I'm trying to play frame tight, then I'm going to do, the frame trap, the best option for this situation all the time, which is like, so if I'm +1, the jab into another jab is easily my best option. I'm going to do it, and I want to see like if you're going to like try to avoid it. And I want to like remain super safe. But let's say you want to go into mix-ups really quickly, then jab into down 3-4 is going to be your thing. So like you can have any other starting point, but knowing where the math lines up is, probably the most important part. Because like, okay, let's say you want to be really heavy on the mix-up and I want down 3-4 right away. But the opponent initially stops you after you do your jab. Let's say they retaliate with a jab of their own, even if they know they could potentially lose to your jab. But it's just like, okay, that signals to you right away that, oh, okay, go back from jab to down 3-4, move it back, and just jab into jab. Or since they're going to re-jab me back, then I'm going to like sidestep or backdash, and then I can punish them.
Right. Okay. All right.
So going, you need to know. Yeah, you were saying?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so like, that's the whole point. So like knowing your frames and knowing whether you're at a frame advantage or frame disadvantage and which options are present for you to use, and then finding the counterplay to the counterplay is how the game gets moved a lot. So there's actually frame ranges you can use to like guide yourself to here. So like if 10 frames is the fastest move, if you're 0, 2 plus 3, so 0 plus 3, within that kind of frame range, know that like you and your opponent can do a ton of stuff in those situations. So there's nothing that's really going to be like able to prevent an opponent from really staying in place. So it's just like, okay, you could go for a jab into a jab. It falls within this frame range of 0 to plus 3. But then like they can sidestep, they can backdash, they can armor, they can do their evasive move. And you don't have large coverage options that are, covered by the frames. Because like down forward 4, Hwoarang's down forward 4, his homing move, would help you take away all the movement. But again, it's a 16 frame move. So if you do the math, 16 minus 1, this 15. Like 15 leaves me open to like a lot of things if I'm going to do it immediately after a jab.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you can't really use high coverage immediately, right? So when you move from +4 to +6, now you have more leeway in your favor. Now, +4 to +6 isn't like, oh, the opponent can't move anymore. They can still challenge. The word is can, but they don't have a ton of room to move around. Like, yeah, if you do backlash, you're +4. So like you've limited more frames. You've taken away more frames from your opponent, and like the challenges they can do are far more limited. Like if you remember your Hwoarang down forward 1, that's 13 frames. It's essentially not 13 frames anymore when you do the math. Like that's a faster move. Nine frames if my math's adding up right. And that means you can mid check them. And the only way they can move around down forward one would be to like sidestep left, sidewalk right. And at which point then it's just like, oh, okay, then I just need to find the options that cover that. Because they can't beat my mid anymore on a 2D level. They need to beat me at a 3D level. So
Mm-hmm. Okay.
those options exist. And then once you move to +7 to +9, or +7 or higher, right? But there's not really a lot of higher frames that exist there. Generally speaking, Hwoarang being the exception to it, as you saw, +12, +23, +14G. But yeah, for as long as you're +7 or higher, your opponent would challenge the least in these frames. Because if we just do basic math, 7 to 9 frames of disadvantage basically means their jab comes out at 17 or 19 frames. That's never a good deal. So they
No.
can't retaliate at all. And since this is not a 2D fighting game, they can't even do a dragon punch. They can't TP with like
Right.
invincible frames. So
Right,
when
right,
you're
right.
at +7 to +9, you have real mix-ups at that point. Well, far more real, like 50-50s, at which point you have, right? So now, +7 would be something like an RFS down 4. So if you enter right flamingo, yeah,
Okay.
when the right leg's up and then you press down 4,
Down 4.
that's down forward 4.
Oh, down 4. Oh, sorry.
You're going to need, because we have to stop jabbing there.
Yeah. The down 4, you said? I'm sorry?
Yeah, down 4. RFS down 4. So turn off block all, change it to standing, and then turn off the punishment and put it to standing block. Yeah, that works. That's +7. So at +7, your opponent can't move anymore for the most part. They can't press for the most part. Like, that's your advantage. So in that situation, RFF down forward 4 would be your best mid. And that's going to be the one thing that's going to hold your mix up fully.
Hmm.
And then it's just like, okay, what are the counter plays to RFF down forward 4, and what are the options I need to connect to it? So essentially, the lower the number, the more options both you and your opponent have. The higher the
Right.
number, the more options exist for you if you're the one at advantage. And then of course, if it's higher at the other opposite end where it's like at negative frames, then you have lesser options. So the higher you go point flip territory, the lesser the numbers are, well, you can control the situation a lot better.
Okay. Okay. So it's just. So let me ask then, I guess, a follow-up question to what you're saying. So it's all about kind of just improvising on real time and kind of trying to see what your opponent does and then reacting in responsive or preemptively at times, correct?
Yeah, that's about right. Well, I wouldn't say you're not. It's like an improv. You technically are improvising, yes, but you can. It's controlled improvisation, right? Because you're gonna map out your options prior to playing.
Of course.
I mean, you should know it, right? Because if you don't know it, then you're definitely playing on the fly all the time. But if you already
Yeah,
have
true.
the options beforehand, so going back to jab on block, it's like, okay, I can beat them this way, and they can move around this way. And I got two options that will cover this defensive option and this defensive option. And then outside of that is mental frames. Like you can add more on top of it. But like on paper, on immediate timing, this is what we're looking at. And this is what we're like focusing on most of the time.
Yeah. Okay. All right, fantastic. Yeah, I totally see what you're saying. I think I'm getting what you're saying too. If in a situation, do you think it's more advantageous than as myself as my like self as Godai? Would it be better to practice always with like would it be better to practice against people or against bots to learn these like frame advantage and frame disadvantages on certain moves of mine? Like, what would be better as a learning experience for myself? Is it better to play against a human, which is a little bit more random, or focus on like just straight on like, let's say like obviously a bot Kazuya will always like do certain moves a little bit more like like a bot would. than like a real player that would try to do something more and like anticipate more like the lows and focus on lows and trying to open me up that way. What do you think would be a better option than for like to learn like when is it a good time to practice my frame data against them? I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm sorry if I'm just sound like I'm rambling a little bit.
No, I get where you're coming from. It's like, what type of opponent, should I play against to get more familiar with the type of moves or options I need to do, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So, against a bot, it's limited.
Yeah.
So, let's say you jab into jab, and let's say for some reason it's programmed in a way wherein you'll only do the standing move. Then at which point you've only really confirmed that yes, this is indeed a frame trap. Yeah. But it's like, when do I use my counterplay options? You don't. So always playing against another player always has the highest of merits. And judging your gameplay on, did I do X mix-up? Did I do X frame trap? Did I respond with Y option to Z reaction? That's the type of way to judge your gameplay moving forward, rather than being like, oh, did I win? Did I promote? Nah, because it's always going to come after. Like, that shiny PNG is going to come after when you put in the work. So you need to build up a lot of the basics first, or like read response type things first, before you can get like a higher PNG. But like, to me, the PNG will always come as you play. So it's nothing to really worry about.
Of course, yeah. That's probably the least of my concern. Like, if I even get to Tekken God, I'm happy with that. But honestly, I want to make sure to be able to, well, obviously not go pro or anything like that, but be able to be a real contender against my locals that I think are full of like real killers, like really strong players.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the quickest way to do that is frame data. And so we were talking about a lot of like frame advantage and disadvantage, and like the range of like when an opponent can challenge. If we talk about the defensive end, though, this is the fastest way to become a threat, because anything that is -10 or higher is a punishable move. So in this case, if you change Kazuya to standing block and do a Hwoarang back 3 like immediately, you'll notice that the number says -19. So that means you are punishable. So the question is, by how much? So if 10 frames is the jab, right? Standard jab. 15 frames is the standard launcher for majority of the cast. So back 3 is a 16 frame launcher. But Hwoarang's down forward 2 is a 15 frame launcher. So most characters have that. So generally speaking, 15 or higher for any move, whether it was a high, mid, or low, is a launch punishable move. And then if it's 14 or lower, that is a punishable move, not launchable. And then of course, if it's any move under 10, then you're essentially safe. And then 0 is null, right? Because it's neither plus nor is it negative.
16 frame starter. Okay. So, question. I know that his just frame launcher, the Skyrocket, it doesn't work exactly like an electric, although a lot of people compare it to it. I feel like at times it is more punishable than electric because it doesn't do as much pushback. Is it better to like this is more obviously more execution like driven on a move? At what point is it better to focus on using that? Is it more of a reactionary thing, or is it more of like a button check almost move against an opponent, in your opinion? Like, just out of curiosity. Again, no, not sure if it makes sense there. Let me reiterate. You know how
no, you definitely were. You definitely were making sense.
Okay.
More about like, okay, when is JFSR essentially useful? Because it's not exactly like an electric. So we need to so we can go back to like, you see, this is where we're gonna go back to raw numbers. I'm sorry if like the video game is just basic math
please.
at this point, right?
No, please,
but,
please. I get what you're saying.
So it says it's a 16 frame startup, right? No, that's actually false. I mean, the animation comes out at 16 frames, but the actual input, forward, neutral, down, forward, 4, that's an 18 frame move. So while the animation does come out at 16, because even the Electric's animation comes out at 12 frames, which it's not 12 frames. It comes out 13 to 14, the input, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, what can we, see from like the raw numbers? So it's 18 frame fastest input. It's a mid launcher on hit. It's safe on block. There is no pushback on block. So it's like,
Right.
okay, 18. When do you have 8 frames of advantage? Oh, a jab on hit. So essentially, that's essentially when you could use it as a frame trap, because the only thing that would beat, just frame skyrocket at that point would be another jab. And it's like, okay, but like, I'm never always +8. That's correct. You're not always going to be +8. So at which point, it is a complementary tool to a lot of your frame traps. So if we go back to like jab, jab on block, is a +1. So, okay, let's say instead of down forward 1 is my mid check here after a jab on block, I want to make JFSR my mid check. Really make him scared from ducking. Yeah, you can do that. That is an option. It's not exactly the fastest option that will cover you, but it certainly can. So when it comes to like mid checks, it can be there, but I wouldn't say it's like the initial option used as a mid check. But you definitely can. So again, it all goes back to like, what's your play style? What is your general game plan? So if your general game plan involves forcing the opponent to duck, so let's say you go from jab to down 3-4 a lot, and you focus a lot on like lows, then JFSR instantly becomes its complement. So in the same situation where you could have thrown out a down 3-4, instead of down 3-4 there, you throw out JFSR. So it really just goes back to like what we mentioned about mix-ups and frame traps, and looking at the counterplay. We really just trying to judge everything at a technical level, because you can really just flow chart, quote unquote, in a sense, or like chart out what could possibly happen if I do X option, and then
Right.
what are like my ABCs afterwards to it.
Okay. I get what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Okay. Fair. It's really more of your personality. At that point, that's more of your personality as a fighter against your opponent, and kind of like figuring out what the right tool is. Okay. I see what you're saying. That's cool. Yeah.
Yes, that's what it is.
Okay. I guess then so what should be something as of right now, after this coaching session, what's something that like I should be prioritizing first and foremost now that I've retained this information? Should I make sure to just set the bot to practice against, or should I just try to go into ranked and try to apply what I've learned now into like against players? Because I know I've also heard the opposite, where players make you build up bad habits, which I obviously am in a lower rank, so I shouldn't really be concerned so much about that. But I don't want to build up like unnecessary habits, like focusing on like certain moves and stuff.
Yeah, another player could potentially give you bad habits, because it's really just about reinforcement, right? So it's like, oh, okay, they allow me to use, let's say, a launch punishable move going back to back 3, that's -19. And if they never punish you for it, whether optimally or not, then you're going to be like, oh, it's okay, right? It's fine. So what I would usually recommend is what you've been doing recently. I've seen like you've done a bunch of streams where you're practicing combos, you're referencing sheets, documents, and whatnot. A lot of lab work. So, we talked about frame data, right? So it's just like, okay, Hwoarang has how many moves? What are the frame data of all these moves? What are the potential mix-ups I can do during any of these moves? How do they connect from one place to another?
Yeah.
So you need to know a lot of that first before
Yeah.
you even go to like, well, again, it comes back to like whatever your learning style is, right? So I would always try to focus on lab work first before actually going into game. But if you're like more of an experienced, hands-on type of learner, then yeah, perhaps knowing a few sequences first and then jumping into the game would be a better learning experience. And then you're like, oh, okay, this, if I do 1, 2, 3 into LFS1 and I get interrupted there, okay, and I just didn't know the answer. So you go back from like after that game, you go to replay takeover, you go to practice mode, you set it up, and you're like, okay, what's the answer here? And then it sticks more because you have an association to it rather than just like hitting the books and being like, oh, okay, 1, 2, 3 into LFS1 can be interrupted by a jab. All right. And then what are the options that are connected to it that will not lose to a jab? Blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's going to go back to that.
Right.
But
Gotcha.
regardless of whichever your learning style is, playing to affirm and be comfortable with the options you've learned, lab work to reconfirm and learn new things. And then it's just like always moving it back and forth all the time.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Definitely. So I'm more of a labber. I've definitely.